to what it might look like from the large perspective, but everything really depends on the particular culture and expectation of your specific division and competition for career. Okay, so I'm Rick Nader. Both Rick, myself, and Warren have been around a while. I kind of refer us to the click and the clack of, if you know the NPR show that used to be on, of sort of proposal development. And I started at Texas A&M many years ago and was sort of on their juggernaut when helping to be behind the scenes with some of the grants that were getting success. And then kind of continued on in that vein, spent about 3 years at NSF as a program manager after being a PI on several other awards in informal science education. And then I moved into University of North Texas, where I worked for Warren when he was provost, and I was in the international programs office. So anyway, so between the two of us, we cover quite a broad range of experience, and we also have counseled many faculty who have had declined proposals. So if you have a declined proposal and you'd like to experience a methodology to understand deeply what the reviews mean and what you can take to heart and what you can discard, we have a kind of a nice methodology for that. So I know no one's on this call probably ever been declined on a proposal, right? Anyway, so that's a little bit about us. And then UTSA has been kind enough to engage with us for past couple of years to assist with career and with various other proposals. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about sort of the mechanics of the career first, and then certainly note the due date, and then get in more of the sort of the behind the scenes questions. So it's a foundation-wide activity, career is. And so that means it's sort of optional, but they have some traditional directorates at NSF that do utilize this award, EHR, bio, engineering, and there are probably some others. But it's not a requirement that the directorates or the programs offer it. So you may not see 100% coverage across the foundation, and some of the directorates and the divisions like to just go ahead and give regular old awards as opposed to the career award option. But it's very prestigious, and it really is about who, right? As opposed to many research grants, which are about what. So the who is have the potential to serve as an academic role model in research and education. And I want to stress that research and education need to be included in your thinking about this type of proposal award. Lead to advances in the mission of their department or organization. So there's a clear tie back to where you are at UTSA in your department and sort of how you fit into the longer term criticality of the mission in terms of research and education. And also, they need to build a firm foundation for a lifetime of leadership in integrating education and research. And that's right out of the proposal solicitation, okay? So I'm not making this up. And what that really means is that you have to look a little bit longer term than you would for a 2 or 3 year project proposal. You need to look 5 to 10 years out, and also be, addressing something that's going to provide that foundation for you as a faculty member that exemplifies this integration of teaching and research. So again, note the word who. It's not so much about just the idea and you're executing it. Okay, and there's always a kind of a tongue-in-cheek saying I like to throw out there, but if you want the gold, you have to follow the golden rules, and that means following the solicitation guidelines, do a little deconstruction of the language and kind of dig into what they really mean by certain words. And so, that's one way to make sure that you don't miss some of the nuances in what the NSF is looking for in the career award. So junior faculty, exemplification of teacher, scholar, integration of these in the context of your organization's mission, okay? All right, so the other thing that you want to do is with almost any proposal, especially the NSF, is get to know your program officer. When I was there, I found that the most rewarding thing that I was doing on a daily basis, as opposed to processing and managing a proposal process, was getting to know the faculty and their ideas. So all of them are listed at this website, and I think it's right there on the solicitation. And you can find them in your particular field, and then look into the particular divisions and programs and see who is a best fit, because I think you want to make sure you don't submit incorrectly to the wrong division. So take the time to look. Okay. All right. Here are some key features. First, eligibility is very important. You have to have a doctoral degree in the field supported by NSF. That shouldn't be too hard a box to check. Engaged in research supported by NSF. Not often do you get funding from NSF if you're into a health or health applications or an NIH related topic. Hold at least 50% tenure track and a position as assistant professor at the time of award, and be untenured. And you have not previously held a career award. You can't get these twice. There is a component of tenure track equivalency, which I don't know anyone who's done this, but I guess if you feel like you fit in this category, these are the things to keep an eye out. You have to meet all these requirements expected to a 5-year continuing appointment as opposed to a 1-year adjunct. Substantial research and education responsibilities as if you were a tenure track faculty member. And then your project needs to relate to the same goal of integrating with the departments, et cetera.
Sorry, Rick. It looks like we're not seeing your slides. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, after all that, okay. All right, that's not good. Hold on. So let me go back to. Oh, I see. Well, you were spared then. Let's see. So I'm sharing now again, but so is that coming?
I can see it now. Yes. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, you missed all the good stuff, like the pictures of Warren and I. But anyway, so so everything else is pretty clear, I think, from the previous description. I won't go back. But picking up here, you know, these are eligibility is something you definitely want to ensure that you have. And is it still sharing?
It's still sharing, yes.
Okay, so as I scroll down, I'll go through this slide and we just covered that. So there are only about 4 of these types of slides, so you don't have to dwell on this too much as far as we'll get a copy to you. You know, one of the things that is a feature is a well-argued specific proposal for activities that will cover a 5-year period. So unlike a regular research grant, this is the expectation for building a firm foundation for a lifetime of contributions to research and education. And so it's certainly separating yourself from your doctoral work into a new direction. And that's a really key feature, so that if there's too much, too many strings, too much attachment to your previous dissertation work, you know, as far as topic goes, I mean, they're really looking for you to start to really leave the nest there and venture out on your own. And within that, they need to see the expected significance of the results. So this is very much like any research project. They want to see that expected significance. Okay, interrupt me if there's a question anytime, or if I'm stopped sharing for some reason. They also would like to see a description of the educational activities and their intended impact. And I stress intended impact and expected significance because I want to keep referring back to the longer term goal and the impact factor that NSF career awards are expecting. It's not something you get your grant, get your data, publish, and kind of move on in a sequential way, but something that's going to require a longer term impact. And then also the integration of the education and research or the synergistic nature. And if I was describing the ideal recipe, I would say that it has to, your education activities are almost codependent. You know, they are dependent on your research. Like, it's just such a seamless fit. That's the ideal recipe if you can come up with that. And certain areas of research are easier sometimes to make those natural connections to the education piece. but others are a little more esoteric, and you have to be a little more creative in how you're going to present that education piece. And then the broader impacts are still a separate component in addition to the educational activities, but are nonetheless as important as ever in any type of NSF proposal. Okay, the thing I want to say here really is when you're doing your research and education, it's not really enough to just do them, you have to assess them. So what that really means is you're having to base your education activities particularly on evidence-based practice for effective STEM education, okay? So in your assessment of those, you should be reflecting a little bit of the literature on STEM education with certain groups of students or certain levels of students or in certain contexts. And there are tons of things that you can probably recognize easily, from problem-based learning to near-peer mentoring to identity theory. There's a number of things out there, and you don't have to have them all. You just need to be very focused on which one you're kind of relying on to assess success. Okay. The other piece is that you don't have to address them separately. I know some of the recipes, this is in the solicitation, I'm not making this one up, that you don't have to necessarily segregate them unless you want to, and it makes more sense to call attention to certain areas if you can intersperse them, because if they are the ideal scenario, you know, where they go hand in hand and they balance each other and they reinforce each other and they depend on each other, that's something that a lot of faculty think they have to separate them, and they do not in their proposals. Okay, just one more sort of on some of these areas that are in the solicitation that I wanted to comment on before we get to panel questions or any other questions, is that the educational activities can be in any number of areas, from, you know, K-12, undergrad, grad, or even the public, or some subset of that public, or some subset of those categories of educational students. But in any case, it has to be related, clearly linked to the research. You can't just throw a generic outreach strategy or K-12 strategy at this type of proposal if you want to maximize sort of the competitive nature of this. Cross-disciplinary often comes up, but I want to stress here that, you know, NSF may talk a lot about transdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, transformative, but it's NSF, okay? You know, I mean, this is incremental science. So you have to push the boundaries of incremental science, but you don't want to just do interdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary just because you can, okay? Or, you know, it really needs to be very, very clearly needed to push the frontiers of research in that research topic that you were proposing to do, okay? And then often, I was in the international office at NSF, so I like to throw in this one because it's always a question I tend to get later is, you know, should I or should I not include international? And so the mutual intellectual collaboration or contribution is still a driving force, so that it's not just a convenience issue, right? It's not either cheaper to do it or familiar to do it or whatever. There needs to be clear and compelling reasons for international collaborations, particularly in how that would position the PI or even the organization through that institutional relationship to take a leadership role. So you don't want to cede leadership, especially in a career, to any other partners. Anyway, so I wanted to make that point. And then I was going to scoot into the panel pretty quickly thereafter, but if there were any questions at this point, Christina, if you think it would be good to push on through, or any questions up to this point.
Are there any questions at this point? Please raise your hand if you'd like to ask something now. Okay, it doesn't look like anything, so I feel like we can move on. Thank you.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. Now for the real stars of the show. Dr. Gaudet and Dr. Wong. I don't know if Dr. Wong is joining because I really can't see anything other than my own slide. So maybe what we could do is have them introduce themselves, and then the sort of, you can see on the screen, the title of their career and a little bit about some of their research interests generally. But I'd love it if they might talk for a minute about, just a couple of minutes about what they proposed and how they came to propose that. Would Dr. Gaudet be able to start that conversation?
I sure can do. Good afternoon. So yeah, that's my face in the center. So my name is Alexis Gaudet. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Geological Sciences. So I was awarded the career project back in summer 2019. So as stated with the title, at how the environmental conditions the way carbonated ecosystems lived during a period of the Earth history that experienced very high greenhouse conditions. So this is about 120 million years ago. So I have a very strong return noise on my computer. So we are exploring, I have to count 4 different study locations, 2 in France, 1 in Italy, and 1 in Oman, to collect rock samples that correspond to the evolution of a reef system, if you wish, 120 million years ago, during which carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was probably 4 times higher than now. So we're looking at the sequence of events that precedes were synchronous and then post-date the environmental perturbation. So the field work has been performed in France in 2019, and since then we haven't been able to travel, but I've been able to have 2 master's students working on that project in France. And I'm going to throw in there a bit of the educational components. So obviously training of grad students, but also I am partnering with a community college in San Antonio to have undergraduate community college students doing 4-week internship. So the plan was to have those internships during the summer, but because of the pandemic, we were not able to do it last summer, so summer 2020. So I switched gears in collaboration with my program director and my collaborators to have those internships online. It hasn't been successful in the fall, so now we're gonna try to do that in the spring. So the idea is to have 2 undergrads from SACS and 2 undergrads from UTSA, let's say sophomore year, so that they have some experience in terms of geosciences, but are not fully trained. They will be mentored by my master's students who have been working on those samples as well as myself. And for 4 weeks, they will look at digitized thin section. So a thin section, if you wish, okay, if that's a piece of rock, okay, we're looking at a very small piece of it, very thin, so that we can look at it using a microscope. So the students will have access to an image in which they can zoom in very great details and basically identify and count the grains they can see, and that's going to reflect the ecology of the ecosystem. And so at the end of the 4 weeks, they will help us understand how the ecology changed through time. And probably something that I would like to mention, because I think that played a role for my project. My proposal is that these students will receive a stipend. Okay, so I design my educational activities in a way that is supported by the budget, so that, the idea was to show NSF that it was just only words. There was something behind to support the activity in a way. And I don't know what, I'm going to stop here because I think my minute is elapsed. And I'm happy to develop any point that you may want to have more information.
Thank you, Alex. That's a great description. And I love your point about the budget. Budget for educational activities makes a big impact. It's not something you can just put on your back as a service activity if you really want to have a deep impact. So good point. And I see Dr. Wang, I think, has joined us. Maybe you could
Hi,
do the same, please.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sorry for being late. Yeah, so I'm Xiaoying, and I'm from the computer science department, and I'm mainly working on software like engineering, which is about enhancing the quality and productivity of software, like industry, like somewhat like building better software, like this Microsoft Teams, something like that. My work, my career like project is about to better test like the building process of software, because now software are being deployed in a lot of different devices and with different configurations in different environments. And but in many cases during the development process, they are not able to exhaust all those kind of like deployment scenarios, and which cause a lot of like problems in the later part of the software life cycle. So my work is mainly based on that, mainly targeting that. I think the major advantage of my earlier my career proposal is that it takes advantage of the emerging techniques of continuous integration, which is becoming more and more popular in software industry, that people are automate this whole testing and building and deployment process to enhance the automaton and productivity of the software building and deployment. And we are trying to enhance that process, but this is pretty new because in the 10 years ago, what people are doing is still they are working on their own laptop, and after that they have a whole deployment team to work on the delivery of the final system. For example, if they deliver something to UTSA, they're going to have a lot of people coming and to make sure that everything works well, the configuration, the deployment. But now they are trying to make everything automatic. But this whole automatic process needs to be tested to make sure the quality is good and it covers all the different scenarios. And so that is my work, my proposed work, and what I'm doing now. I think it's kind of catched one of the the trend in the current software engineering development, or research progress. And we're kind of published one or two the pioneer paper in this area, which apparently help our proposal to finally get in to convincing the reviewers. Yeah, I think that's all I have from my side. Okay.
No, that's a lot, and very, very helpful. And I want to just call out two things that I heard that reflect sort of the career approach. One was, big question, right? That's going to take some time. It's going to be very important to the, how do we interpret the geological carbon, the CP, right? In that sense, and then that's a big question that's very important to the field that takes time to elaborate. And the other one is this industry trend where, the reviewers all saw, the impact of this. And so that type of excitement is one of the fundamental things that has to be in every NSF proposal, except in this case, they're stretched out over time a little bit, not so much into the short period of time where you would do a regular research proposal, and they fit into a longer term career research goal. So very, very good, great illustrations of both those points. Are there any questions for the panelists right off the bat? I have questions, but I don't want to just start asking questions if there are already questions out there. So I wonder if anyone would raise their hand, or otherwise just come unmuted, or whatever you can do to make yourself known. Okay, still soaking it up, I can tell. Okay, so let me start with my questions. I'm going to be on camera, but reading from the slides rather than put the slide up there. And I was going to ask you again, sort of, what is it that distinguishes a career award from a regular NSF research award? You probably don't have to go into too many details since we basically just did that. But if you had any particular examples, Dr. Cadet, from yours, or Dr. Wang from your proposal that you wanted to illustrate that point.
Sure. I think the scope of the educational component activities, I think that's something that's very different. And I think you touched about that a bit, Rick, the way you want to think how your research plan is kind of meshed together with your educational component. I think that's really something that you have to think wisely. And I was looking at my proposal, actually. I know that in the first 2 pages, I have 2 hypotheses, one for the research, one for the education. And I think that's something that the panel appreciated quite a bit. So I think you really want to do your homework in terms of educational. For my field in geoscience, there's, and I'm sure it's the same for any kind of discipline, there's a decent amount of literature that can help identify gaps in knowledge. And I would really encourage anybody who wants to do a career proposal to include those references, because it's really showing that you've done your job, you've done your homework, and you want to show how conducting your career program will help filling this gap, bridging the gap. I think that's really something that I struggled with. I mean, my award is my 3rd attempt, right? So and the first one was very bad in terms of reviews. So yeah, I think really the last time what really helped was all this revamping of the educational component. And I'm not in education science, but I have a collaborator who is in education science, and yeah, that helped.
Great points. Dr. Wang?
Hi. Yeah. Thanks, Alexis. Yeah, I think the educational part is definitely a very distinguishing part of a component of career proposal, because it is not that required for other proposals in that sense. And usually you're going to have at least 20% of the proposal about education. And I think what I learned from my earlier awardees that I was learning from is that they have evaluations for the educational part. So it's not only just saying that I'm going to do this, but also about I'm going to evaluate my educational component to make sure that it may not work, or it may work or not work, but we need to have some conclusions, right? That is the way of doing science on education. And another thing I want to mention about career is that, for my personal opinion, the research part of career is kind of more broader and kind of longer, or a larger scope. And that and actually I discussed multiple times. Same with Alexis, and I got the award in my 3rd attempt. So we have a good experience. And when the program director talked to me, but I think that's also kind of a good experience. I have been talking to the program director each time I got rejected. And what the program director told me is that career should be something that defines your career. So it's if you want to, it's somewhat if 10 years or 15 years later, if you think that the people in your academia area or in your discipline, they're talking about you, and then what is going to be your work that they're talking about, and that is what you want to submit to proposal to career as a career proposal. So the general idea is that it shouldn't be just that you have done it for 3 years, 5 years, and it's done. You should have plans that is going beyond that 5 years, even 8 years, 10 years, a longer time plan. Another thing is it should distinguish you from other people also. So generally, for example, if already 20 people in your area is doing the same thing, then you are not the best of them. then it seems that you are not going to be very competitive. But in contrast, if like this is important thing, but only you or like several people or a small number of people are working on it, and you have shown some specialty, like from you have some special perspective on it, and for example, you have different like background or some different perspective toward this problem, then it's going to be a very good topic to use for the like a career proposal. So that's what he told me. So but I think that helps, definitely help. Yeah. That's all I have. Yeah.
No, that's great feedback. And I would say that 2.4 times is the average of this resubmissions before first award. So you're right on the money. So yeah, so interpreting those reviews is, as I mentioned earlier, on declined proposals is a very important piece of understanding what was really wrong and how to improve it. So excellent examples of that. I also want to highlight a couple other things. About preparation, like how does a faculty member in whatever field know, how do they know if they are ready for career, or if they know it takes 3 times, they better start the first year of eligibility. But, what advice would you give to a faculty member to say, you should go for career if, or just go in for a regular proposal if not, right? I mean, what would you advise, Dr. Goudet?
That's a tough one. So I think for me there was some kind of expectation from the dean of my college, who, I mean, it kind of makes sense. He wanted the College of Science to be successful, so I'm sure he was doing that with all the assistant professors, trying to enjoin them to apply for a career. I think I submitted a first NSF regular proposal before the career, and then I switched very quickly into the career world because it was the right time, right? It was just around soon after my 30 review, so I knew it was the time. And also a colleague of mine who's now not at UTSA anymore, she received an award, the career award as well, I think 2 years before me. So, you have that example, and you start to think, okay, why not me after all? Yeah, and also, I think less than a year after I joined UTSA, I attended a workshop for early career faculty organized by NSF. And so I think it was 4 days, we were trained on education and research, how to manage your time, this kind of stuff, and we visited NSF. So, within the first year of my tenure track position, I was aware of what the career world was and how important it was. So you start to, have some ideas and then start to wonder, okay, is it good enough for a career? Is it not enough? And give it a shot, and you get the first reviews and you adjust, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Wang, did you have anything to add to that about
yeah, just like a few sentences. I think like it's kind of differ from people to people, definitely, and from person to person. And but my general suggestion is going to be like because you have 3 chances. So maybe you want to, the first one you may not need to be that careful because you want to get the feedback. And so you don't want to wait until like you're 100% ready to submit the first one, right? To do the first attempt. But generally, I would just suggest you to at least do one other proposal before career, so that you get some basic feedbacks about any proposals, and then you can submit like a career or. Generally, I think you do need to have some preliminary work and some data preparation before you are submitting I would say like the most sincere attempt of of career. Maybe you can try the first one, just give it a try. And for the second one, the third one, you may want to really be careful to make sure you have done good preparations. And usually after the first trial, you're going to talk with the program director. You hopefully you have the chance to talk to the program director, and if you can get some advice from the program director, it'll be very helpful, because usually, especially for the specific discipline you're in, they have a lot of like things to tell you. Yeah.
Good additional. I appreciate that. I would generally, as a rule of thumb, say don't send in a trial balloon proposal. But if you really have a great idea and you want to test it out and you feel like you can put really good 100% effort into your first submission, that's going to get you a lot farther down the road and get you that feedback you need. I totally agree with you there. So important to have publications. It's important to consider the factors that make you distinguishable from either in your own previous experience or your current context of your institution, or moving forward into that long-term perspective. I think those are the things I was hearing both our career awardees talk about. I kind of want to move on to, unless there are questions that have come up. How much time do we have, Christina? Are we set at an hour or something, or?
We are set to conclude at 3 p.m. At 3:45 is when we're hoping to start the Q&A, but really that's up to you.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. And that's why people aren't. That's why people aren't asking questions. It's not time yet. So yeah, I really would probably dig into just one or two other, sort of general questions, and I think we really have to go into, specific questions that faculty are listening in on have, because I think those are going to be obviously most relevant to them and most direct, not so generic a question. But I think we've got a good sense of, some of these guideposts moving forward. So could you talk a little bit, if you have, the sort of the institutional factors that you felt really helped you? I mean, being at UTSA versus being at another institution, having access to a facility or two that, was there anything about what the institutional context was, or your departmental context that really favored your success? We'll start with Dr. Goudet again.
Yep. So the first thing that comes to my mind is the fact that UTSA is one of the largest HSI in the country. I think it's I'm not going to give the number because I'm going to blank here, but it's within the 5 biggest, I think, for 5 largest. Anyway, so I mean, there's an effort from NSF to improve the representation of underrepresented minorities in STEM, for instance, and in geoscience there's really a need for that diversification. So this is something I included into my proposal, especially since I'm partnering with San Antonio Community College, which is also HSI. So I think that played a role. And also, I believe in my educational component. I think at some point I have the production of artifacts, of websites in both English and Spanish. So there's a question of, students participating to the program, serving as role models for the next generation of geoscientists. So I think NSF probably like that. To come back to the scale of the department itself, I know the second time I submit, I believe there was a remark from a reviewer that the letter of support from my chair was very good, very well written, because I think he included some financial support for my lab. There was also some IT support. So it was a support on different level basically, and I think the reviewers, if not the panel lab, did pretty well. Yeah, I think that's all. These are the 2 main things that I can think of.
Okay, great. Dr. Wang, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, thanks. So for my side, I think, the first one is the minority serving institution. That's true, and that's a very good thing to put into the broader impact part for any proposals, not just like career proposal. And especially, I think now the NSF, because I've been in some panels and they seems to be more appreciate something like a track record. So for example, if I've been working with the students and that will be also good. So before you're submitting the proposal, you can try to attract some students to like undergraduate students and try to work with them. And even I could also publish some papers. That'll be all very good like track record. And also from my department, I think the major support is from the mentors. Because we do have like the mentorship mechanism, and I have 2 mentors, and one of them got career award also. So I got his like proposal and almost everything. And so yeah, because they are from your own like discipline, it's going to be even better. They're going to give even better advice from than we, right? Because that's because we are from maybe different discipline than you. But your own discipline, the people from your own discipline will give you better advice. Yeah. So those mentors really helped me a lot. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Goudet. You said have a hand up, I see.
Yeah. Something that Georgine just said that just popped to my mind, that the mentoring within the department. Not the first time, but the 2 subsequent rounds of submission, I had at least my first 2 pages of the proposal reviewed by my mentor, my colleague who is a career world D's, and a colleague of mine who used to be a program director at NSF. And especially my mentor, she heavily edited the proposal, the first 2 pages, and that helped. Really, that helped a lot. And I think it's very important that you start writing that, especially that first part of the proposal, early enough so that you can have a pair of fresh eyes looking at your proposal. For instance, in my case, I felt my first paragraph wasn't punchy enough, catchy enough, and my colleague Marina, when she saw it, her first comment was like, well, you're talking about coral reefs, and what about biodiversity? Because that's where you have the highest biodiversity on Earth. And I was like, it didn't came to my mind that I could, use that as well. And yeah, that improved very. So bottom line, if you can have someone or several people looking at your proposal, that would help, I think.
I love that comment, and that's so good. In fact, when I used to be on review panels for various agencies, I would find the most critical, grumpy reviewer I could find in the room, and I'd say, could you review my proposal before you put it in? And yeah, it helps a lot. And just getting those diverse perspectives, I think the expertise and the discipline is critical as a review component. The educational piece and the integration of such, and then an NSF program manager, like my advice would be from that perspective. And then yeah, very good points. And I think that's kind of reflective of the 3rd time's the charm in a way, is that if you can front load as much of that in advance as you can, then you may wind up just having to submit one additional time, or I don't know too many that get funded on the very first try, but maybe there are a few out there. Is anybody on the call? Let me know if you have been funded as a first-time submitter, either to career or anything else. I'd love to hear how you made sure you got the funding. Okay, I only had if I can share again, and I apologize if this is, I hope it works. I'm going to try this. I'm probably sharing you right now, but let me share some things I really liked about your proposals. And, and it was so funny, Alex, when you said, well, I got to find what I did with them now. When you said, I think this is Dr. Wang, so that let me start with Dr. Goudet. So I went through your abstracts and I looked at stuff I loved, right? I mean, if I was reviewing it, I would kind of scan, right? And I wanted to highlight exactly what you just said. When your first paragraph, your overview before you get to your intellectual merit and broader impacts, which is sort of the nuts and bolts, Are you able to see that? It's a public record, by the way, so it probably, I'm probably not in trouble for sharing it. I hope you don't mind. You know, that you talk very clearly about triggered either the adaptation or death of carbonate platforms, right? During the Cretaceous. So boy, that's exciting, right there. Your reviewers are hooked on the excitement factor. And then it's a matter of just following through with most of everything else. Like any reviewer would be very excited about that. I did notice you put CP in here before you spelled it out, but that's okay. That's my editor in me. It didn't seem to hurt your chances of getting funded. And then to unravel whether the role of climate is protective or destructive. See, these kinds of, you know, big questions, I wanted to just call that out. If you can place your research proposal and your education proposal for career in that kind of big context, that's very helpful. And then I love the part about community college students. And you'll notice it's the second thing mentioned, but it's the throughput, it's the connectivity of the second and third things, you know, that are going to be like doable, right? Makes sense. They're connected to each other. They're reinforcing. And so I wanted to call out those types of, you know, real strategies. I mean, rather than I'm going to go to this kindergarten, then I'm going to go to that junior high, and then I'm going to go to, you know, the senior citizens home, and I'm going to, I mean, it's not effective to throw a lot of stuff at the wall in your outreach strategies or in your broader impact. Is this still showing for Dr. Wong?
Still showing.
Okay, good. So same kind of comments here. Look at ongoing trends, right? What's going on in industry? What are some of the things that need to be done for resolution of earlier failures, right? Or resolving failure is the point, right? I mean, so tools supporting the quality assurance and development productivity, you know, making sure that there's some kind of a long-term push, and then raising unique challenges. These are the kinds of things that started to distinguish his award. And I didn't really have time to go through the rest, but I wanted to sort of brag on your narratives there, just to kind of illustrate some of the points you've been making all along. Let's see. Okay, so we're sort of back. I have one or two final questions for panelists, but I could also save that until we get some feedback from the participants on the call. If anything has triggered a question, we could go to that now. It's hard to see people, and also it's not in person, so I apologize if you're raising hands or fidgeting around. I can't see you. Christina, I'll rely on you to bring anybody out that you know out there. Is there anyone out there that has a question or an experience with any of the careers? Anyone been submitted but not quite funded yet?
I'm not seeing any raised hands, but I will keep you updated.
Okay. All right. Well, let me go to my closing arguments or whatever. I think that if there aren't any questions at this point, where they think people are starting to see where they fit, you know, are they ready? Are they not ready? You know, how do they align with their departmental context, et cetera? One quick question before we leave to the sort of wrap-up question. You know, is a lone wolf faculty member okay? Like, for example, you know, if I'm, you know, alone in my department as far as my interest, but my department had really sees my work as pivotal or critical, you know, am I okay still to submit, or do I have to like be, you know, lockstep with sort of the group going down the road, if you know what I mean? Because I know we have a lot of individuals out there that bring unique perspectives to the overall direction. You know, how critical is that in your mind? I know, you know, I'm going to call on Dr. Godot first. Did that make sense, that question?
So you're asking if whether, I mean, being isolated in my department is a
Well, and not that you were, but or not that anybody. I'm not picking on anybody's particular circumstance, but I mean, sometimes there's an edge to that particular movement.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm in a small department. We are now 7 tenured faculty, and we used to be smaller than that. And doing what I'm doing, I'm the only one, I believe, on that time period. So I don't have collaboration in my department, but I have listed collaborators for each localities I'm going to visit. I listed, there is a technique that we can't do on campus, but I have a collaborator at Texas A&M. I have a letter. My program evaluator provided me with a letter. So you see what I'm saying here? I mean, I have, I tried to demonstrate that despite I'm doing that on my own, I have the collaborators, I have the network to make that project successful, and especially with the the field areas being outside of the US. I think it was essential to prove NSF where I do have the contact over there, or I know the area already because of my track record, or I checked for the need of permission, for instance, to do field work. And well, I don't know if it's applicable to other fields here, but for geology, for geoscience, program director will ask for this kind of permission. If it's not stated within the proposal, or I think you can also address that in the data management plan, but don't send me on that. If you don't show clearly that you thought about asking permission, your proposal may just not be considered. So, yep.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And the facilities statement is often where you can cite permissions, especially for different countries. You have different requirements for access to geolocations, right? So that's a very good point. Okay, thank you. And Dr. Wong, did you have anything to add about sort of faculty positioning within the department?
Yeah, so I think generally career world, although I think like collaboration and kind of like support from the same field is kind of like very important for any proposal, but career maybe is the one that has least, which is kind of like least important because it is just like an individual. It's just for you. Compare with other proposals. So don't take me wrong. That I'm saying that it's important, but it's compared with all the other proposals. It's not as important as those. I think those proposals, because in other proposals, it's more important to have like support from the department and collaborators. But generally, I think sometimes you can be isolated in a good way, and sometimes you can be isolated in a bad way. So the general idea is that, as I mentioned earlier, my program director told me that the important thing is to define your career. So if you're kind of isolated, it means that you're doing something different from other people. And that kind of means that you are in at least you are not the same as other people, but you can be in a good way or bad way. In a bad way means that what you're doing is not of interest of anybody. And that is definitely of a bad way. Well, in a good way, it means that what you're doing is something that other people they want to do, but they don't like to do because it's too hard. There's some like reasons, challenges that they don't want to work on it, and they appreciate that some people are working on it. So in that case, then it's something that you can actually emphasize in your proposal. So I would just suggest, if from my personal opinion, maybe like someone who is kind of feeling in this like isolated position can try to reach out to the department faculties and also like potential collaborators in the field to ask about what they feel about what they're doing. So actually, I have a proposal. I think it's it was very well written, and we got 2 very good. And but we actually gave that up because finding it was like a competitive, but not funded. Because one of the panelists who gave very good, and I don't know, maybe he or she said that I think it's very well written proposal and it's feasible. But I think if we have money, if we have more important proposals, we can I forgot the exact saying, but it's kind of like it's of lower priority. You see what I mean? So if we have money, we want to support other ones. But this is a good proposal, but we just support it if we have extra money. But I don't, that NSF never have additional money. so that this is kind of like a bad example, saying that it's a good topic. It's a topic that nobody is working on, but it's not that important. And nobody is really that interested in it. So you want to get some opinions from your colleagues in the same area and your department about whether they feel it's isolated in a good way or bad way. It's something that people don't like or are not interested in, or like the people, they think it's important, but they just don't want to work on it because for some reasons, right? So I think that is what I have for this topic. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. I agree. There's a part of the NSF review panel process which goes into discussion, and I describe it in my "What Happens Behind Closed Doors" workshop in the review panel. It's like, well, how come I failed with all excellence and very goods? It's like, what happened? And I said, well, some sizzle missing, something's missing there. It could be not your fault. One little tidbit of factoid for the benefit of everybody. NSF did NSF when I was there, and still probably the culture is very self conscious about its equity, fairness, unnecessary somehow bias against new PIs or something like that. They want to make sure that they spread the wealth in meritorious ways and not just go with those who always get funding. And they looked at the institution, they looked at the publication records, they looked at the pedigrees, they looked at all these things, and the only thing that correlated with first award success was number of previous attempts. So it should be very encouraging to those of you who are just thinking, oh, I could never do that. Okay, yeah, you could. Okay, I see AD has a hand, please.
Yes. Hello, everyone. This is Aldu from the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. I have a question because in some of the STEM field, the research is getting more and more interdisciplinary. And so for regular NSF, we may invite collaborators to contribute together to a single award. But for career, you are on your own. So in that case, if you are doing in interdisciplinary field, do you need extra help, like support letter or from collaborators, to show that you have access to those techniques? Even if you don't have that for you, but you can get from collaborators and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'd leave to the panelists first, and then I have my own comments if not covered. Either of our panelists have a response to the necessity for individual award versus collaboration and required resources? How do you thread the needle on that? So I think Dr. Godet's example was pretty good, where so to answer the question about, how dependent or independent can you be? You must demonstrate the longevity of the topic to address it in 5 years, the excitement of the topic to address in 5 years, but then of course collaborators are okay. They just can't be co-PIs, right? There's no such thing as a true sort of co-PI relationship. Collaborators can be senior personnel, but they only get letters of collaboration. I think that there's some money can flow through. I don't think there's any problem with that, but it needs to, you need to be the leader as the principal investigator in your career award. unlike, well, you know, the PI is the leader, of course, in any proposal that they submit to NSF, but the sort of shared intellectual responsibility is much more clearly on the shoulders of the PI for a career award. And so they almost need to be critical but tangential otherwise, right? I mean, you need to have this piece of the expertise, but that's not what drives the question. So when you do interdisciplinarity or transdisciplinarity, you really have to be sure you're addressing an exciting topic that field would recognize. And if you need additional collaborators, that they fill a very specific role, but not, you know, overly dependent. And in other words, you know, they need to fit into your framework for your research questions over those 5 years. Does that help? I've not actually been a PI on a career. I just have seen a few of them, and I'd love others who have more experience with that to weigh in on that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? That was a great question, by the way. Okay. So don't see any more in the chats. So let me do my wrap-up question for, this is sort of the, you know, say anything you want to say question as we wrap up from our panelists. And I want to thank them in advance for their time. And I think that NSF PIs are just those kinds of people that don't mind talking about what they love to do and don't mind helping everyone else be successful. I think that's part of the culture. So if you see anybody with a career award that fits kind of your idea on their award search, you know, engine at NSF, send them an email, send her an email. Don't be shy. I like to tell faculty that you can be any one of the 7 dwarfs that you might recognize. You can be grumpy, you can even be dopey. You just can't be bashful. Okay, so I say that with tongue in cheek. Okay, so you know, don't hesitate to reach out. It's a social activity, pursuing proposals, especially the funded ones. So anyway, my last question to the panelists are there any nuances, tips, or other kind of esoteric pieces of advice that you have for applicants? Is there anything you just really think faculty aspiring to compete for career need to know, in addition to what we've already talked about, or to reinforce what we've already talked about? Dr. Gaudet, are you there?
Yeah, I'm thinking, I think I can consider 2 things. And I think I already mentioned one of them. I think we discussed already that for a career award, you need to have a strong, at least that's my thinking of that. I think your educational plans should be well thought, as well as your evaluation plan. So, you know, don't hesitate to build your educational plan the same way you would build your research plan, basically. So if you can define hypotheses, goals, and if you can support that by citing the literature, I think that's the way it should be done. And conversely, the same way you are justifying the work tasks that are in the research, do the same for the education. What I'm trying to say here is that you're gonna put a decent amount of your budget for the research, where there should be some money for the education as well. I think to me that's what played a great role for my third attempt. And to stay in the topic of budget and money, that's my second point. I think my first 2 rounds, I've been fairly, I restricted myself because of financial boundaries that I was putting on myself. And on the third one, I just really budgeted the activities the way they should be quoted. And, you know, the program director called me back and she said, well, the panel ranked you fairly high, but you are out of the budget and it was 150,000 that I had to cut because there was a piece of equipment in the budget that I cut out for several reasons, so that I cut by 110, I think, so I was still above, but in a range of values that was okay for NSF. So I would say don't be shy, don't limit yourself, because of the money. If your ideas are good, if your proposal is strong, and Rick will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think NSF will come back to you, and they will ask you to revise your budget if your research and your educational plans are strong.
I would definitely second that. Yeah, we saw, if they love your idea, the budget's secondary in their minds. They don't throw you out just because you got over a few $100,000 maybe. Anyway, yeah, so they love the idea first, just like any faculty member would. And there's a lot of the faculty that are NSF are rotators. That means they're coming in on a part-time basis, 2 to 3, 5 years, or not 5, but 3. Max, and then that's what I did. I came in and then rotated on out, because they're always looking for about half of their program officers to be fresh ideas and things. And anyway, so good point. Yeah. Okay, Dr. Wang, any esoteric advice that we haven't given already?
Oh yeah, sure. So yeah, I second what third what Alexis mentioned. Yeah, I have been raised twice on my budget. Like the program director come back to me and saying that which part needs more money, so you may want to raise that part. Yeah, I have been experienced this twice. But generally for the small tips, I think the first one is you want to get in touch with the program director. You want to generally get in touch with the NSF. Before you're submitting the proposal, and trying to get in touch through workshops, kind of you try to contact with them and saying that I want to be a panelist and to talk to the director, and so you want to kind of join them in the panels, and what is going on there, and what are the important things, what are not important things, and get feedbacks from the program directors. Usually, most of the cases, they are pretty friendly, and they want the young PIs, the young professors to kind of grow and to succeed. And so that's the first thing. The second part is the special about Korea. The first one is kind of for any proposals, but the second one is special for Korea. Is that Korea proposal, in my opinion, is more likely to invest in people instead of the project, just the project. Definitely the project should be important, but also the investing people. So a very important thing is you want to define yourself in a certain field. So for example, I have been doing work in software engineering and security, but finally I decided to go to software engineering. And then you're going to the software engineering conferences. You are although I'm still publishing papers kind of in between the two areas, but I'm publishing the software engineering venues. I'm talking to the software engineering people. I'm talking to the software engineering program director. So you're defining yourself in the field. And you want people to know about you, and you can go outside to do presentations. You kind of want people to know that you are someone in the field, so that when they look at your proposals, they feel that you are someone in the field. Generally, I think if you're submitting a small proposal or a medium proposal, it's more likely you can go to a different area, like in the interdisciplinary, and you can get support from other panelists, some panelists from other area. But for Korea, I found it a little bit difficult. For example, if I'm submitting to security and nobody in the area knows me at all, and it's going to be very difficult for them to support you in the panel, because I think because they're investing people, and it's kind of someone in their area, and to enhance their career, to enhance their discipline, right? So that's another thing, tips I found that special for Korea. You want to find your position in the field and to find out who are going to be judging your proposal, and then you're going to find out you want to make the area know about you, about your work. Yeah. So I think that's my tip. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, both panelists, Dr. Wang, Dr. Goudet. Very interesting, very insightful analysis. Probably a trip down memory lane about your reviews over the past few years before you got your award was hopefully fun for you as well. I certainly enjoyed learning even more about career from you, so it's helped me specifically Christina, I guess if there are any other wrap-ups or anything else, otherwise I really, I don't know how to make an applause sign here. But, I would
Thank you so much. Thank you. Before we all leave, I wanted to go ahead and plug a few things. So tomorrow we're going to have an NSF Developing Broader Impact session from 9:30 to 11 a.m. So go ahead and check out that link at the bottom if you're interested in attending. Also, to help with your NSF proposal, we have a Developing and Maintaining K-12 Partnerships workshop that will be offered on February 19th. That is also available there. At the end of this session, I'm going to go ahead and send out, most likely tomorrow morning, a little link that will tell you how the Office of Research Support can help you with this. We have a menu, we have different levels. We are here to help you succeed. So thank you very much for coming today. You'll have a wonderful day.